Karen Reed's SUV was not damaged by hitting a pedestrian.
Jackson is speaking like the prosecutor. The roles are reversed in this case. The minute John goes into the house, boom, they're cooked, and Karen wins.
These voicemails are evidence that the two were fighting. The actual evidence in this case, however, will show the exact opposite. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia. John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal. You're going to ask yourself, who's moving a car at 3:30 in the morning into a blizzard?
Hold on a second, that changes the calculus a little bit, because I keep saying they dragged him out. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Buckle Up, It's the Law. Folks, yesterday we did Alan Jackson's opening statement part 1. Today we're going to finish up Alan Jackson's opening statements with part 2. Let's go, everybody. And Karen Reed's trial number 2, April 22nd, 2025. Let's go.
The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. Commonwealth will intimate, as they already have in their opening statement, that these voicemails are evidence that the two were fighting. The actual evidence in this case, however, will show the exact opposite. You'll hear that Karen was very agitated. You'll hear some voicemails where she's swearing. You'll hear voicemails where she calls him names. There's name calling. But you'll also hear the context of those voicemails. And every single one of those voicemails was left for John after he failed to come back out of the house.
Very important.
After he failed to respond to her voicemails and to her texts. Karen believed John had just left her sitting there, grabbed a beer, was partying with his friends. The evidence will actually show that John and Karen never had a crossword, not a single crossword that entire evening before he left that SUV and went inside the house.
I love how he keeps repeating, and when he went inside the house, and then he went inside the house. He has to keep, because then it's an anticipation of the fact that on cross-examination and even direct examination, all of those witnesses, the McCabe's, the Alberts, or as we call them collectively, the McAlberts, they're all going to highlight that John never went in the house. John never went in the house. It's their most important piece. John never went in the house. John never went in the house. Because the minute John goes into the house, boom, they're cooked, and Karen wins. Instantly, she wins at that point. And so John must have not gone in the house. That is universally what they have to maintain. And the only person who slipped up on that last trial last year was Allie McCabe, when she said Colin wasn't at the house when John was there. And I know some of you said, well, it's ambiguous. Colin wasn't in the house when John was near the house, or Colin wasn't in the house when John was, I don't know, somewhere. But she accidentally let the truth slip out, is what I think happened. And then she cried because she realized her slip up and whatever. But at the end of the day, Jackson, Yannetti, Alessi, and Little all have to make sure that anytime they talk about John was in the house. John went in the house because that's what happened. Because his injuries are consistent with getting into a fight. And ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see that. You see, the language continues. If you watched Hank Brennan's opening, he sounded like the defense attorney. Jackson is speaking like the prosecutor. The roles are reversed in this case, folks. The roles are flipped. Let's keep watching.
And you will learn what Karen had absolutely no way of knowing at the time. It wasn't that he wouldn't respond to her. It's that he couldn't respond to her.
Because he was unconscious or dead.
And the evidence will show you why. Let's talk about that. We'll introduce you to a doctor named Elizabeth Lopesada, a renowned forensic pathologist, a medical examiner, and a professor at Brown University. She will tell you that the injury to the back of John's head, first of all, was immediately incapacitating. And that has meaning. At the moment he suffered that fatal head injury, he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury.
That's important because when you suffer an injury that bad, consistent with the text messages of Haas Long to Die in the Cold by Jennifer McCabe around that same time, it's consistent that they struck him over the head, they dragged his body outside into the cold, they waited for him to die, and then once he died, checking his pulse or whatever, after they Googled how long does it take for a body to die in the cold weather. And then they dragged him to the front, because if they left him in the back, it would clearly be who the culprit is. But when they drag him to the front, they're like, well, we'll figure it out later. And then Karen cracks her taillight as she's backing out of her own driveway, and that does her in, because then they're like, oh, we can take apart this taillight, we can break it, and then scatter the ashes of the headlights, scatter the pieces on and around in front of 34 Fairview. You may recall, and I started doing this before I'm premiering this video, so it's in my hopper, as they say. It's in my vault, ready to be released at any moment whenever we get around to it, because I still have to premiere Guarino. That's probably going to happen tomorrow, assuming we don't get any witnesses that I need to cross-examine that you guys are absolute, like, Larry, this is a must witness. We have Guarino. There's going to be about 4 of those. And then we go to Trooper Paul. Trooper Paul is going to testify at some point, again in this case, because he's an expert. Yeah, some expert he is. But anyway, they're going to be presenting him. The government is going to be presenting him as if he's an expert. And as a result of that, Trooper Paul, you will hear, because I already know in the first trial, he's going to have to say the same thing here, that there was a piece of plastic that he found, that he didn't even analyze, that was found by the fire hydrant. If you remember the diagram, those of you who've been around since trial number 1, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's this diagram, and there's like all the pieces are here, and then nothing marked over here. And he said, well, the point of collision was right here. But the problem is, if you look, there's a photo. And Jackson, I think it was Jackson crossing him, he asked, like, there's another piece right here. So how did that little piece of plastic get over here when the point of collision is over here? Did it fly backwards? He said, no. Well, that means my calculation of when the collision occurred, it wasn't here. I guess it's here. And he learned that in the middle of frickin' trial. Are you kidding me? It was the most botched testimony I have ever seen in my entire life. Trooper Paul is a hoot, you guys. And I have about, I think, 5, maybe 6 episodes of him that will premiere after we finish with Guarino. We released Barros 2 days ago. And so, yeah, I have tons of stuff in the hopper, and I just wanted to let you guys know. Also, don't forget to subscribe, like this video. It helps us, it helps you, and you get to enjoy a lot more of this content. So let's go.
He was completely still and incapable of interacting with anyone or anything. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia, as the Commonwealth will undoubtedly allege. His body showed no signs of it. No frostbite, no cold-induced injuries to his organs, no damage based on cold or frost. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientific evidence and the medical evidence will establish that John O'Keefe had to be injured somewhere else.
Oh, so wait a second. Hold on a second. That changes the calculus a little bit, because I keep saying they dragged him out. Maybe they changed their minds about letting him freeze out in the cold. And, while he's unconscious, all you have to do is cut off his oxygen, and wait for him to stop breathing, and then dump his body outside. That's much easier, because they realize, like, throwing him out there in the cold, it might take a while. That's actually even better for the defense, because if there had been signs of hypothermia, then the prosecution would have plausible deniability. They would say, well, after she hit him, she just left him there to die in the cold, which never happened. But if she never hit him and he never laid there to die in the cold, think about it. It means he was warm inside the house while he was hitting rigor mortis, meaning his body was stiffening up. When the blood stops flowing through your body goes through something known as rigor mortis. It's Latin. Mortis is root for death, and rigor, rigorous, something that becomes stiff, becomes hard. So as he's going rigor mortis inside the house, it's very possible they just left him inside, and then in the morning they dragged him out. And we have that information, I think, from Guarino, that the GPS showed he has been, after he died, he moved at 0.05 feet per second based on cell phone data. I believe it was him. I could be confusing my troopers. But anyway, let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong or if I'm correct.
Somewhere warmer, and his body had to have been moved
There it is.
out into the cold. And that's where, ultimately at 6 a.m., Karen found him the next morning. You will learn that John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. Let me say that again. The evidence will establish that John did not suffer a single injury on his body consistent with having been hit by a car. Not one. You'll learn that John's torso, his ribs, his chest, his arms, his hips, his legs, his knees, his ankles, his feet, all of them, no broken bones, no fractures, no contusions, no torn ligaments, no internal injuries, not even a bruise.
That's huge. That's huge. How do you not even get a bruise from being hit by a car?
Nothing consistent with a car accident, despite the
Hank.
Commonwealth's contention that he was slammed into by a 6,000-pound SUV. Not a bruise. Dr. LaPosada will tell you with medical certainty that, in fact, John was not struck by a vehicle. Medically and scientifically, he could not have been struck by a vehicle. Therefore, as I said, there was no collision.
How funny would it be? I just thought of this randomly. Jackson, it's not really Jackson, it's a Jackson robot. And the guy in the back in the blue suit, he's the one controlling him like his puppet. Like, can you imagine if he's just like, okay, and then say this, and then do that, and then move to the left? Just a stupid thought my brain just had. I don't know. Are you guys, anybody else thinking that, or am I alone?
She will tell you that the patterned abrasions on John's right arm, the patterned abrasions you see over my left shoulder, they're not the result of being struck by a car or a taillight. You'll take one look at these injuries and you'll agree with Dr. LaPosada. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal.
A dog.
Like a large dog. Like the large dog that was inside the Albert house that night.
Oh.
You'll
Zinger.
learn that Brian Albert has actually admitted that his large dog, the family dog, is, quote, not good with strangers. And of course, John, never having
Look at
been in the
Aiden
house
smiling.
before, was a stranger that night. You'll also learn that oddly, very oddly, after having their family pet for 7 years,
Yep. Got rid of it.
a short time after this incident, the Alberts got rid of that dog. They called it rehoming her.
Uh-huh.
She was gone.
Rehomed up to heaven.
Dr. LaPosada will also tell you that the injury to John's head was not the result of falling backward onto a flat lawn, cold or otherwise. Rather, Dr. LaPosada will tell you with medical certainty that the injury pattern to his scalp was produced by an impact from a raised or ledged surface, a surface that does not exist on Brian Albert's front lawn where John was found. The medical evidence will establish no hypothermia, no injuries from a car strike, no collision with a motor vehicle.
I love he keeps repeating it.
And forensic analysis of John's cell phone, Mr. Brennan mentioned that in his opening statement. The Commonwealth's own expert will ultimately support the exact facts that I just told you, including the temperature data.
Wow. So powerful.
John O'Keefe was injured someplace warmer, and he was moved. That alone is reasonable doubt, but there's much more. You'll also learn that there were many people at that after-hours gathering at Brian Albert's house who would have left by the front door just feet from where John O'Keefe's body would have ultimately been, had he actually been there, right after 12:30 a.m.
Yeah, how do you
This is
walk
what
past the body?
Commonwealth's claim is. There were nearly a dozen people who walked out that front door directly adjacent to the precise spot where John O'Keefe would have been lying. Not a single person, not one, not a single person, saw a 6'2", 216-pound man laying sprawled in the front
Huge.
lawn in dark clothing on a light white dusting of snow.
Huge.
Not one.
Huge.
Then the evidence will also show that every one of those same people drove by that same spot, not walked by it, drove by it to leave the house, and still not one of them saw John laying in the yard when they left between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning.
Unbelievable.
But you know who else you'll find never saw a body on that lawn?
Brian Albert?
The snowplow driver.
Oh, the snowplow driver.
A completely independent witness.
Yes. Yes.
Charged with plowing the streets in Canton that night. You'll hear that Michael Proctor, oh, he's not done yet, Mr. Proctor. You'll hear that Michael Proctor wrote a report where he claimed that Fairview had not been plowed that night. You'll learn that that was completely false. That was a lie. Michael Proctor did not want any more witnesses. He didn't want the truth, and he falsely claimed that the road was never plowed. You'll learn that he wouldn't look for the plow driver, but we did.
Yep.
And we found,
Lucky.
and we'll introduce you to Brian Loughran. He plowed Fairview that night, and what he's going to tell you is that there was no body on that lawn at 2:30 in the morning.
That's huge.
You'll learn that Brian Loughran passed by 34 Fairview, traveling right next to Brian Albert's front yard, and at 2:30 a.m., John O'Keefe was not there. But you'll see that the plow driver also provides some other troubling information, troubling testimony for the Commonwealth. You'll learn that after making that pass at 2:30 a.m., he showed up with his plow an hour later. He stopped at the entrance of Fairview. He was looking up Fairview to decide whether or not to plow it, but he saw an obstruction. At 3:30 a.m., he looked down the street, and in the very spot precisely where Karen would later find John's body laying at 6 a.m., there was a car parked in front of it, a Ford Edge. You're going to ask yourself, who's moving a car at 3:30 in the morning into a blizzard on the side of the road? You'll learn that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, intentionally ignored this fact as well. He did no investigation to find out who owned a Ford Edge, but again, we did. And the evidence will establish that Ford Edge happens to be a favorite model of the Albert family. More than one Albert owned a Ford Edge at the time. You'll learn that those facts will add to the mounting and the overwhelming evidence that there was no collision and John O'Keefe's body was moved onto that lawn.
Guys, as I'm listening to this, I just want to say this. As I'm listening to this, I'm telling you, Jackson is the prosecutor. Brennan just took a back seat. If I'm a juror, I'm like, I want this man to represent me. Much like our clients come to us and say, Larry, get me money because I was injured by somebody else. That's what we do now. Anywhere in the country, if you've been hurt, 1-844-774-HURT. Don't forget.
Reasonable doubt in the case. You'll be introduced to science and physics, even from the Commonwealth's own experts. That science will establish that Karen Reed's SUV was not damaged by hitting a pedestrian, and conversely, John O'Keefe's injuries did not come from being struck by a vehicle. The Commonwealth mentioned triggering events, but what you'll actually learn from the experts, some of them the Commonwealth's own experts, is that a triggering event is not evidence of an accident. It does not evidence a collision. That's why we're here.
Yep.
A collision. And there's no evidence of one.
Yep.
Zero. You'll also find that those exact sort of triggering events that the Commonwealth will rely on are relatively commonplace on Karen's SUV, and none of them are associated with a claim of a collision.
Yep.
Folks, the science will not lie, and the physics cannot lie.
Nope.
And that science will tell you with certainty there was no collision with John O'Keefe.
Correct. And
We'll
notice
add that.
notice how many times he's repeating that theme. That's his theme. There was no collision. He did not get hit by a car. There was no collision. So the jurors he wants them to go, will you stop saying that? We get it. That's when he's finally going to go, all right. Obviously they can't talk to him. They can't say that to him, in person during the trial, but the implication is there, and that's what matters. It's absolutely wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. I'm going so slow, you guys. I'm sorry. It's just so magical, this opening statement. I may have to break it up into 3 parts. I do apologize. I thought that I could break it into 2, and it's just so good. I have so many things to say that it may have to... We're probably going to have to break it up into 3 parts because there's still 20 minutes remaining, and I just... I can't, I have to comment on this stuff. It's so good. It is so epically good because Jackson is a master. Yannetti is a master. Alessi is a master. Little is a master of their craft. And listening to Jackson, if you juxtapose the opening, when Yannetti did his opening, there were so many question marks. There were so many pieces of evidence that were still unknown. Like Jennifer McCabe never really testified. Brian Albert, they gave some testimony, but now we have them locked in. And impeachment impeachments are going to be rampant, folks. They're going to be absolutely rampant throughout this trial because we have them. We have them locked in. We have their testimony. We have their words. We have everything that we need as the defense. I say we, I'm lumping myself in with the defense. Again, not because I'm a criminal defense attorney. As I said, I'm actually slowly and eventually going to be moving away from that. It's going to be like a 5-year process. But, you know, if I don't get started now, then I'll never get started. But the key is that I am on the side of truth. That's what I'm on the side of. I'm not on the side of David and Alan and Robert and Liza just because they're the defense attorneys and I'm a defense attorney. No, I'm on their side because they're on the side of truth. They're on the side of justice. They want justice to be done and not the corruption that Bev and Brennan and Lally and the McAlberts and Buchanan and Proctor and Paul and Guarino and all of them are trying to promulgate in this case. This is about, I know it sounds weird. It's almost like a movie. It's the battle between good and evil. You have good and you have evil, and you know who they are.
I want to take you back to the night in question, January 29th, for just a few minutes. Remember, Karen had gone home after dropping off John and John walking to the house. While Karen was asleep at home with John's 13-year-old niece, what were the people who had been at Brian Albert's house that night? What were they doing? While she slept, what you'll find and what the evidence will show is that they were extremely busy. You'll learn that after a long night of heavy drinking, Brian Higgins left the Albert residence, but he didn't drive home. Rather, he drove over to the Canton Police Department, where he kept an office.
That's right. Remember his testimony. If you haven't seen it, go to the playlist. Go to the playlist that I have. I broke down all of Higgins' testimony. There are about 11, I think, episodes of Brian Higgins, and I explain each one. Collectively, it will take you maybe 3 hours to watch the whole thing. And do that at your own leisure. Obviously, this is far more important. Do it after you finish watching this video, which is now. I wanted to thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all learned something. And I will see you all tomorrow for part 3 of Alan Jackson's opening in the Karen Read case. Bye, everybody.